Hello everyone, this is your host, Gabriel Garcia, the Wandering Quill and Wandering Scribe, coming back with another episode. Now, many of you already know that my book, The Gathering, is already published on Barnes & Noble. However, many of you may not know that I actually had something published before The Gathering. So, for those that do know, I published a series of short stories that I wrote through Mossy Point Publishing LLC, the publishing house owned by my friend Courtney Atkins, the same publishing house that printed the Hellfighter, the online journal of African Americans and military history, featuring my debut article, The Harlem Hellfighters, A Legacy. With Mossy Point Publishing, I published my short stories as Beyond the Trails, an anthology by Gabriel Garcia. And I decided to take this moment to read one of my short stories to you, to let you know of the other works that I have created. And the story that I will be reading today is one of my personal favorites that I have written. It is called Hellhounds, and it's a World War I horror short story, which I'm sure many of you will enjoy. The Belleau Woods was the last battle of the Great War. American and Allied forces pushed against the German might as the Allies advanced toward Berlin. Both sides were locked in a stalemate, and neither knew that taking the woods would be a game changer. History said the U.S. Marines defeated the Germans in one of the bloodiest and most ferocious battles U.S. forces would fight in the war. What they did not tell you was how. The German soldiers dug a defensive line between themselves and the Americans deep in the woods. The men waited for their enemy to strike for the next several hours. They and the Americans had engaged in brutal close-quarter fighting for several days. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. Something needed to happen to end the stalemate. The German command decided to set up machine gun posts and artillery batteries to defend against the Americans. As the Germans prepared, many men felt something watching them. Not the Americans, but something else. Everyone settled in the trenches as night approached and hunkered down for the night. The date was June 7th. Not wanting to take any chances, the commander placed sentries along with the machine gun nests. At one post, brothers Peter and Randolph Ulmer took turns operating the machine gun. Peter was the older brother, and enlisted as soon as Germany declared war in August of 1914. Randolph had recently finished his basic training and requested to join his brother's unit. As they monitored their position, Peter decided to take a smoke break and leave his younger brother in charge. "How can you smoke at a time like this?" asked Randolph, as he rested his head against the butt of the machine gun. "It helps calm my nerves," answered Peter as he lit a cigarette. "Everyone is on edge. We haven't seen the Americans for some time now. It's unsettling." "I agree. We've only heard those damn howls these past few nights. I thought there weren't any wolves in these woods." It looks like the Americans weren't the only ones with bad intelligence. Peter took several puffs of the cigarette before he tossed it on the ground. As they talked amongst themselves, Peter and Randolph were unaware that something was stalking them and their battle-hardened brothers in arms. Something hungry for blood. Suddenly, Peter heard rustling coming from some bushes. He grabbed his rifle and positioned himself next to his brother. "Did you hear that?" asked Randolph. His finger was already on the trigger of the machine gun. Peter slowed his breathing and waited again to hear the noise. After a minute went by, nothing. He could not see anything in front of them, but it was so dark. Because it was so dark, apologies. He began to think that it was just his imagination. But then he heard that sound again. This time stronger and louder. Aiming, Peter was about to fire until he heard the eerie sound of a loud howl. As the deep howling caught them off guard, two glowing eyes emerged from the darkness. "Peter, what the hell is that?" asked Randolph in a whisper. Fear was beginning to take hold of him. In an effort to try and calm his brother, Peter placed a comforting hand on Randolph's shoulder. "I don't know, but we're safe," said Peter. "Whatever that thing is, it has to go through a hail of bullets before it gets to us. Besides, Mom would kill me if something happened to you." Randolph chuckled a bit, still uneasy about the eyes in front of them. They were not the only ones who saw the red eyes in the night. Along the German line, men began shouting. Some said the eyes were to the east, others claimed they were coming from the west. This constant state of fear began to take hold of them. The night was long, and the torment was just beginning. One soldier climbed up over the trenches to investigate. His friends handed him a dimly lit lantern to see. Walking a few steps forward, his hands began to tremble. His breathing became erratic. Questions of doubt filled his mind. As he descended further into the darkness, he shined the light from the lantern to the woods. Seeing nothing, he turned around and began to walk away. Suddenly, he smelled a foul odor from behind. He turned his head slightly over his right shoulder and felt something breathing down his neck. Petrified, his limbs went numb, and in an instant he was violently pulled into the darkness. The only thing that remained was the eerie, dimly lit glow from the dropped lantern. From the trenches, others heard the piercing sounds of a struggle. Just then, a cry of despair filled the night. The sound of tearing flesh, bones breaking, and the wailing of their young comrade echoed through the night. The lingering and nauseating sounds were too much to bear. They all felt helpless. As the cries ceased and a settling silence took over the trenches, everyone held their breath. "What's that coming from the trees?" asked Randolph. Everyone looked ahead and saw a large shadow approaching them. Suddenly, the dark figure emerged. It was taller than a man, covered in matted fur, walked upright, and had a mouth full of fangs. Small, pointed ears, massive forearms, and bear-like hands and feet with excessively curved claws. The beast's fur was covered in blood, and the soldier's half-eaten head was clutched in its right paw. The creature tossed it back to the German soldiers before giving an evil chuckle as it melted into the night. No one wanted to go over and get the head as fear took hold of them. So, the head just laid there, looking at them with glossy eyes full of immense anxiety. Randolph was beyond scared. He was mortified. Nothing in his basic training had prepared them for this. Peter was also terrified. He had already seen many horrors during his time in the unit. What had just transpired was something else altogether. Something unnatural. "No one goes to sleep," someone shouted in the trenches. "We need to remain vigilant at all times. Check your ammo and fix bayonets. We're in for a fight now, boys." Peter, Randolph, and the others fixed bayonets and gathered all the ammo they had left. With every man waiting for the command to attack, Peter knew that this battle would not only decide the fate of the war, but theirs as well. "Any sign of them?" asked Randolph sheepishly. Peter shook his head. No. Since the recent sighting, it had almost been 5 hours of torment for the men. No one slept for fear of being dragged away in the middle of the night. Peter had gone through all his cigarettes and resorted to chewing on pieces of cigarette carton to calm himself. It was now early morning, June 8th, and dawn was fast approaching. Peter knew something had to happen. Whatever they saw and heard last night, those creatures would attack soon. However, after getting no sleep, he felt his eyes slowly drooping. Before he drifted off, he heard the snap of a fallen branch 100 yards away from them. He jerked his head up and looked in the direction of the sound. At that moment, Peter saw what had been tormenting him and his men. Across the German line, past a few trees, was the outline of a dark, wolf-like creature approaching them. He grabbed his rifle and nudged his brother. "Randolph, I see one," said Peter. "Behind the trees, a couple of yards away. Pass the word along." Randolph quietly left his machine gun nest to spread the word about their position. Slowly placing a round in the chamber, Peter placed his sights on his target. Looking downrange, he rested his finger on the trigger, waiting for the right moment. Randolph rushed back to his brother in the machine gun nest and immediately took a position on the machine gun. "Everybody's ready," said Randolph. "On your command." "Good," responded Peter, "because they're coming at us head on as soon as I fire. Once that happens, all the wrath of hell will be upon us. Do you have a plan then? If we get overrun, get out of the trenches and make for the forest edge behind us." "All right then." "On your mark." As the creature moved into Peter's line of sight, he pulled the trigger and fired off a round from his rifle. "I have you now, demon." The bullet zipped through the morning air and hit it dead in the head. It did nothing but cause the beast to yelp as it jerked backwards a bit. Quickly reloading another round, Peter and the others heard a blood-curdling roar echo throughout the forest. Before anyone had a chance to react, 10 black figures came bursting through the trees and began to charge at them. Blood and fury were in the air. Without hesitation, Peter and Randolph began firing their weapons. "Offense Führer!" yelled Peter. Soon everyone was firing off rifles and machine guns. A hail of bullets was created in front of them. Some soldiers even threw a couple of grenades, which added more destruction. As the fury of bullets and grenades barraged the attackers, Randolph noticed that some beasts were dying. The younger brother believed that they were winning. The older soldiers began to see and believed the same thing, which caused them to stop firing. The young soldiers all cheered as smoke emanated from their guns and the beasts lay dead. They had defeated their enemies. Randolph joined in the celebration. However, Peter was not celebrating. No. Something was not sitting right with the older brother. This victory felt too easy. While everyone was cheering, Peter took his rifle and inspected the area where the creatures were positioned. Kneeling beside the few dead and bullet-ridden carcasses, he noticed in the soft soil there are more paw tracks than he expected, and they branched off in a different direction. "Where are the others?" asked Peter. Peter followed some of the tracks that were leading away from the creature's position. They were very big, like a bear, but not as deep in the dirt. These creatures were fast and intelligent. It is here that Peter began to put it all together. They only sent a few to bait them. That meant there were still more out there. More watching them. Suddenly, Peter heard a faint howling in the distance. His eyes widened with shock as the realization dawned upon him. "They're behind us!" Running back to his men as fast as he can, he prayed they were still alive. As he returned to their defensive line, he saw everyone was still celebrating. Firing his rifle in the air, he shouted at the others in a desperate attempt to get their attention. Sadly, it was too late. Emerging from the trees behind them were the remaining beasts. Before they knew it, the monsters were among them. Chaos and destruction enveloped them. Fearing for his brother, Peter ran to their foxhole, but did not find him. Terror was taking over him as he desperately searched for his brother. From behind, he heard the screams of men being torn to pieces. Making his way to the far end of the trenches, he found 2 traumatized, numb souls huddled together between a smoky machine gun and ammo crates. Their faces, pale as bed sheets, gave empty, blank stares. Has anyone seen Randolph? Asked Peter as he tried to catch his breath. One of the soldiers, who was trying to gather his words, said he saw one of the creatures drag Randolph away as he was putting up a fight. Peter's heart sank. He had failed to keep his brother safe. What do we do? Whimpered the other soldier, turning his head around. Peter knew the beast would return, hungry for survivors. They needed a plan, an escape plan. One of the soldiers stuttered. The trucks! They're back at camp! If we can reach them, we can escape. How? Asked the soldier, almost yelling. We won't make it in time. Opening a box of Stein grenades, Peter attached as many to his belt as he could. As the two soldiers looked in confusion, Peter explained his plan to them. I'll cause a distraction and lead them away from the trenches, said Peter. Once I'm gone, go and get the trucks as fast as you can and get the hell out of here. What about you? Asked one of the soldiers. Peter chambered a round into his rifle. I'll be fine, responded Peter. Just wait for my signal. Taking a deep breath, Peter hurled himself over the trenches and into the open field. Grabbing two of the grenades from his belt, he removed the safety pin from each and threw them in different directions. The explosions grabbed the beast's attention. Grinning like a madman, he shouted at them. Over here, you bastards! Peter fired off a round in the air. As a result, as he had planned, the beast all began to charge toward him. Seeing this as a signal, the remaining soldiers immediately left the trenches and ran back to camp. With the others gone, Peter ran deep into the dense forest, ducking over branches and jumping over fallen trees. He yelled at the top of his lungs, which kept the beast's attention. Throwing the last of the grenades, Peter stumbled over a rock and tumbled down a slight hill. Landing hard on his back, he lifted his head and saw a white star on a door. Scrambling to his feet, he discovered that he was in the American encampment. However, something about the camp was bizarre. All the equipment was still there. Guns, tents, medical supplies, everything was still here. Except for one thing. The soldiers. Where were the Americans? As he searched the area, he entered the officer's tent and found a classified document titled Operation Lichen. Opening the tan file, he began to read and discovered the horrifying truth. Finding himself invested in the information, he felt to pick up a familiar foul odor. Aren't we nosy? Said a deep voice. Peter quickly turned around and saw the leader of the beast with his men behind him. Finally, Peter could get a full view of what had been attacking his fellow men. It had a sizable wolf-like head with small, straight ears, a broad chest, massive paws, and a large mouth that exposed huge teeth. Its fur was red and had a white streak down the back. He quickly recognized who it was, the familiar red-stained fur. Peter glared at the monster as it calmly picked bits of flesh from his teeth. What the hell are you? Asked Peter. The beast looked at Peter, smiled wickedly, and showed a pair of dog tags around his neck. He then ripped them off and tossed them at the German. Peter caught the dog tags and read, Robert H. Holmes, a.k.a. Big Bad Wolf, USMC, United States Marine Corps. That's impossible, said Peter. Peter told himself this could not be true, but it was. Throwing the tags aside, he looked the wolf directly in the eyes. So what happens now? My men... Pardon me? My men have already seen to your friend's demise, responded the wolf as he laughed evilly. You've lost, German. So, this is how it ends. For you, that is. We've won. Peter shakes his head. No at the wolf. Not yet, said a defiant Peter. I'm still alive, and from what I gather, you seem to be the alpha. I kill you, and your wolves will be leaderless. The mighty wolf chuckled at Peter's threat. As he sat Himself on all fours, he gave one last remark at the young soldier. "Tell me, German," began the wolf. "Do you even know how to kill us?" Peter chuckled and clutched his rifle tightly in his hand. His eyes were full of rage. Before he began to charge, he answered the beast's question. "I'm gonna cut your damn head off," said Peter. "See if that works." After the Battle of Belleau Woods, the two survivors escaped the force and returned to German command. When asked what had happened, the young soldier stuttered out a single phrase. "Hellhounds." Translation: Hellhounds. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoy Hellhounds, one of my many short stories that I have published. If you would like to read it for yourself, as well as the others, I will link it below of where you can purchase it. It is an ebook available on Barnes & Noble and on Amazon. I hope you enjoyed this little preview into the other works that I have written, and I thank you all for your support. Again, please check out Beyond the Trails. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, as well as The Gathering, which is available on Barnes & Noble in print for paperback and hardcover. I thank you all. This has been The Wandering Scribe, signing out.